I'm very excited about my next guest. I first became aware of him on, I believe it was Best Week Ever, when my gal Jamie would say, you've got to see this show, you've got to see the show, you've got to see the show. And I'd say, well, okay, other comedians being funny, why wouldn't I want to watch that? And then there were a couple of people on the show that struck a nerve, and this gentleman was one of them. And then she told me that she saw him live in Los Angeles at a place called the UCB Theater in Hollywood. And called Doug Benson's Interruption. And I said, well, what is that? And she said, well, people go on stage, comedians you know and think are funny, and they do their act, and he interrupts them. And you should do it. And I said, why would I want to go on stage, do my act, to be interrupted by a funnier guy? That sounds like maybe a living hell. And then I went and saw it, and sure enough, it's one of the funniest things ever. He has a podcast also on the iTunes called, I'll let him tell you about it. I believe it's Doug Benson Loves the Movies, and I was on that. Like I said, I wanted to have a funny show today. A comedian I'd known far too long, as you could tell by the first interview, and now a comedian who I think the world of, but have known for a very short time. Please welcome Mr. Doug Benson.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
I'm exhausted already from Bobby's interview.
Right? Let me refresh on your water,
please. Bobby didn't touch his water the entire time.
You know, he did very little other than talk.
He's like a camel.
Yeah, he really
talks.
If only. He doesn't like a camel.
He doesn't need water. He just goes.
He talks nonstop.
Yeah. 40 days.
You're just coming in from where? It's a Sunday, so you're just traveling back from?
No, I was in town this weekend.
Oh, good. How'd that feel?
It was great. It was at the West Hollywood Improv.
That's right. I read on Twitter. And Sarah Silverman was very funny, and then you had some other great people that were on the show also?
Yeah, whenever I play in L.A., I try to get, people that are more famous than me on the bill to get people to come to the show.
Did you put the lineup together at the Improv?
Yeah, I help out with that when I'm when I'm the headliner, yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, when I first came to town 103 years ago, the Improv in West Hollywood was a showcase room. There was really no headliner per se on the weekend. So now they do headliners and have for a couple of years, I guess.
Oh, and I grew up in San Diego, so as soon as I, was old enough to, and I hadn't decided I wanted to become a stand-up yet, but I love stand-up. Like, I knew all the stand-ups, and I would go to the Improv in West Hollywood, and because you can get in when you're 18 at the Improv, and the lineups, it used to be like, especially on the weeknights, they just do one show, but it would start at 8 and go to 2.
Right.
And it would be like wall to wall, like you and Arsenio Hall and, all the famous, Stephen Wright, just all the comedians that I knew and admired.
Yes.
I mean, I should say I admired a lot of them because I didn't know any better.
Right.
But but it was a really good education, and really it was really fun to see that. Like, it was one of those clubs where people would wander in throughout the night. The audience would get really big in the middle of the show.
Right.
But if you had a late spot or an early spot, you're out of luck. You'd get like a small crowd.
That's how you knew I'd been to town a while before I learned the politics. This is the mid '80s when the gold rush of stand-up was really starting to come, to fruition, and you knew that you were accepted when you got moved into those prime time spots. Otherwise, you're on at 7 or at 1:13.
Yeah, or just getting on at all. I mean, when I first started getting spots there, it was so exciting.
And how old were you when that started?
I'd save the list, because they always post a list every night.
And it's Seinfeld, Leno, you.
Yeah, and I'd be on there, and I misspelled my name, which is one of the tougher names to spell.
Benson.
Benson.
It's hard. A hard one.
Yeah, and so it was really exciting, too. I think I even framed one from my first official spot there.
That's pretty sweet. And how old were you at that point?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, probably late 20s, maybe?
Late 20s.
Yeah, I started really when I was really young. Like, I started like 22.
Right.
But then didn't get any traction until, 8 years later.
And what
there's a lot of day jobs and stuff.
But had you moved to LA when you were 22 to pursue stand-up full time?
Not to pursue stand-up, just to get into. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be in show business. I wanted to act or write or whatever.
At what age did that bug set in, that decision, I want to be in show business?
So early on, extremely early on. Like
10, 15?
I must have been, like in high school I was in, all the plays and drama class and all of that. And
right on.
And I was into it I was a hammy from an early age. You know, like when I was a teenager, I did magic shows at kids' parties.
Nice.
I feel like I got to ramp this up. Like Bobby was so.
No.
Let me just be Bobby for a little while.
No, don't, please. I beg of you.
I did magic at kids' parties. I'd bring up a kid and I'd say, "How big's my penis?"
I'm so exhausted after that interview. But the beauty of the show is that we're breaking it up into pieces on iTunes and on various forms of podcasts and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
And so this is all this references to Bobby will be lost on most of the people who see this interview. So.
Well, Bobby's, I'll say his full name if I bring him up again. Slayton.
Bobby Slayton.
Because he's such a racist in his act.
Yes.
Because it's so funny how he gets all defensive when you call his act racist. But that's the joke, because he's being racist.
Well, so
it's funny.
He's being the next generation of Don Rickles.
Absolutely. But even meaner than Don Rickles, because he rarely...
Never sings.
Don
nice
apologizes
guy.
a lot.
Yeah,
Bobby doesn't have a song that wraps it up and makes everybody happy again. He finishes with his 4-year-old daughter and decides... So he's always been very racist in his act, and I think he's a funny guy, and I used to open for him.
Right.
Like when I first started getting work
on the road.
And, on the road, yeah. When I started out, like the improv chain would fly in the opening act.
Yes.
Now it's all about the openers and the middles are all like local dudes, and then the headliner comes in from out of town.
So how old were you? When are we talking that you were opening for Bobby?
Well, late 20s, early 30s.
So around that time, you were starting to get frameable time slots at the Improv. You also start doing road work, working for guys like Slayton and what have you.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, my act isn't racist at all. Every once in a while, maybe say something kind of racist, but it's just not my area. And like you were saying, I'm just worried about people, being mad about it. And,
yes.
And and I just don't really think that way. I don't think I'm that kind of person. But Bobby and I were hanging out at the pool one time when we were working together, and I was just like, maybe this would work for you, Bobby. And I said.
You offered him a racist joke.
Yeah, I thought of a good racist joke that I would never say. And I said, you should say, how come they can make a movie called White Men Can't Jump, but they can't make a movie called Black People Won't Shut Up During the Movie? And not only has it been a staple in his act since that day I suggested it, I don't think I've ever seen him do a set without doing that joke. Every time I bring it up to him, he goes, "You're the one that came up with that?" Like, he doesn't remember. Like, all the times in our careers where somebody's helped us with a bit, when you're saying it, you think of that person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Every time. Yeah. And he just is such a, he's so great at being Bobby that he can just move on with his life.
Yes.
And I thought of that.
Yeah.
And when you call him on it, he goes, "Oh yeah, you thought of that." But he, he still has that like mindset that a lot of comics have, where it's just like, once it's out of his mouth, it's, it's his.
Yeah. Now,
never paid me for it. Took me out to a nice dinner once.
Oh, yeah, did you get your $50 that way?
Yeah.
It's a minimum for
$50,
jokes, right? So now,
remember that guy David Strassman, the ventriloquist?
Yeah.
He had like dinosaurs, and he had his main puppet. He'd leave the stage, and it would still keep talking.
Yes.
People loved it.
Yes.
He wanted me to write for his puppet. I've had this happen a few times. Jeff Dunham asked me this too.
You're the go-to guy for writing jokes for puppets?
Will you write for my puppet? Because the puppets are sarcastic and obnoxious, and then they play the straight guy to that.
Yeah.
So they're like, you could write in the puppet.
Because there are no other comedians that can write sarcastic.
Yeah.
No, come on. Why were they going to you?
I don't know why. Because
they loved your act.
Oh, that's it.
Let's just say that.
Let's say that.
All right.
Let's say they thought I was a funny kid, and they were like, So this one guy, David Strassman, who I hadn't seen in maybe 10, 15 years, I gave him some joke, and he said, "All right, $50, but I'm gonna pay you $5 every time I see you."
No.
And I only got to $10. He still owes me $40 because I never see the guy.
A prick with the puppet.
Yeah.
Stiffed by the prick with the puppet.
So I'm hoping
that should be the name of your third
podcast
book.
Viewer.
Yeah. Right. You got to get him eventually.
Get my money.
I haven't heard.
I don't even know if he does anything.
Yeah.
But that's the other weird thing about comedy clubs is when I was coming up and when you were coming up, ventriloquists, impressionists, guitar acts, music acts, magicians, jugglers.
I'm one of those, by the way.
They were all always headlining all the clubs all the time,
Yes.
and crowds loved it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they've been kind of they've been
Only
shoved
the
out.
strong have survived. Yeah.
But a lot of them have been shoved out.
Yes.
Or there's just one person that's known for it.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like prop comedy, it's
Right.
just Carrot Top.
Right.
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 And ventriloquism, it's
How about
just
that?
Jeff Dunham.
How about that, though?
How about it?
You do some prop acts. You do if you put props in your act, someone will say you're ripping off Carrot Top. What would that moment be like for you?
That's not good.
No.
That'd be sad.
Tell me about the transition from stand-up to suddenly we're seeing you on television. Was the best week ever? Is my first introduction. So you're obviously doing stand-up shows before that, Comedy Central or something.
I think before Best Week Ever, I might have done my first Comedy Central half hour.
Right.
But then just lots of.
Was that one of these
There
premium?
used to also be tons of stand-up shows on TV. I think I did Evening at the Improv 7 times. You probably did it 20 times.
How are you? You must have done all these things.
It's crazy.
Are you revealing your? Are you not revealing your age or not showing your age? Because
I'm not showing it.
How could you have been around the same time as me? I think we're a good 15 years apart. But anyways, that's not important.
No, I just mean that when Evening at the Improv was popular, you were a extremely successful comic,
And you were just starting.
and I had my foot enough in the door. They had 5 comics on an episode. Each one was an hour long, so they had the.
It was one of the things that
that's
actually
what killed it. Is they used too many people that were too raw and not
Yes,
ready.
yes.
Janine Garofalo and I were on an episode of Evening at the Improv together.
Well, that's the fun thing.
when I
is
first met her.
The people you were teamed up with on shows like that. People
Yeah,
you
yeah.
would meet. Yeah, they did kill the gold rush of stand-up comedy. So yeah, because I put you in that world, the Janine world, the Dana Gould, the Patton Oswalt, that age group, right? A little bit?
Yeah, I'm a little older than them, but definitely,
I wouldn't have
or
guessed.
maybe the same age as Dana, but definitely, that sort of crowd. Like,
What about some of those who became writers for The Simpsons? How is that not something that interests you, since you're writing just for puppets?
it's so funny. I just sort of always kind of held out for the idea that I could make it as a performer. I wrote on stuff constantly, and I've written for all of my friends. Whenever my friends are on, roasts or anything where they, hosting an award show, I write jokes for them. Like in the case of Sarah Silverman, I came up with that joke that got her into hot water about her Britney Spears kids being adorable accidents or adorable mistakes. that was my. I suggested she say that,
Nice.
and then she said it, and then she got in a lot of trouble for it.
Right.
People got mad.
And-
I don't know why.
All right. So you didn't get the $50 for that one either.
No, but that one, the movie awards is a fun one because you get to hang around backstage.
What was the last filthy, disgusting joke you wrote for a roast?
Well, that's the thing. My jokes aren't that. The ones I write for the people aren't that disgusting. But you were at the William Shatner one.
Yeah.
And I wrote Patton's last line in that, which was when he took out a paper bag and said, "Settle a bet, act your way out of this," and then snapped it.
That was your
That
joke?
was me. I wrote that.
Jesus, that was one of the strongest jokes of the night.
That was a nice one.
Seriously.
Yeah, and I also wrote Jeff Ross's "You've Let Yourself Boldly Go."
Nice. You wrote the best jokes.
Yeah, well, that's that's the thing is I would like to be up there on the dais myself, but at least writing them for people is second best.
People want to know when this came from Twitter. We have
Okay.
Twitter.com questions. You're
I'm on
at
Twitter.
Doug Benson.
Yes.
Yeah, we've tweeted we've DM'd.
Yeah.
This came from Andres. Wow, a little help on how to pronounce that name. Anybody?
Andres Lucero.
Andres Lucero.
Lucero.
All right. Andres Lucero asks when you're going to live stream Doug Benson Loves Movies.
I'm
Any thoughts?
no Kevin Pollak.
No. Well,
I don't have
Or
this
should you
kind
have
of elaborate. Like the people watching this don't know. There's 14 people sitting around here.
yeah, it's a
Taking
small
care of
room.
every little
it's 107 degrees.
There was a person for each puppet on your wheel. And but yeah, I like the. You've done my podcast, I Love Movies.
Yeah.
And
Got
I
stomped
like
by
how.
Jerry O'Connell. Stomped.
Well, that's a silly game. You can't really.
It keeps me up.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll do a rematch.
Is what I'm asking. All right, so you do that as a podcast.
Yeah, just audio. I
Right.
just want people to listen to it while they're working out or on a long flight. and
That's all you want.
I want people. I want the most captive audience possible. People that are just desperate for something to listen to.
This is what I'm going after as well, by the way. The people on the long
But this,
flight.
people have to watch it.
No, but by the way, please, computer, laptop, you download this, you watch it on the flight to New York, or back, those long flights, anything to kill those long
But
flights.
you can't do this when you're at the gym on the treadmill.
That's why we have to do the audio as well. Thanks for the heads up. All right, I'll get you.
Yeah, but I just like the audio. I just like, when we do it in front of a live audience, I hijack the audience from, Comedy Deathray is a popular stand-up and sketch show that's done at the UCB Theater here in LA every Tuesday. And so every other week, I just go in and do my podcast right before their show. So the audience is essentially, the live audience is just people who, it's better than standing outside.
Yes.
Waiting in line. So they come in early and they watch the podcast. And like you said, I had you and Jerry O'Connell on. And
Sam Levine, who's
Sam's been on
this show and here again in support.
Yeah.
As I saw him on the show once also. Yeah, it's a great show. And how did that, you just decided, let's just do this? Or
Yeah, I just...
constantly looking to ways to reinvent what it is you do?
Yeah, well, also, that's the most popular stuff these days seems to come from a place of somebody doing what they want to do or what they do well, and then eventually somebody goes, hey, let's make that into a real thing.
Right.
So if this became a bigger, if this became like some real interview show for me to do about movies, I would love it, but as long as it's not becoming that, it's still a thing I enjoy doing.
Right.
It's still fun to do and relatively easy to do. I've got guys that come in and
It's playful and fun.
yeah,
Everybody.
I haven't had to learn how to post it on the internet or anything like that. I have a couple dudes that do that.
A couple of dudes. Speaking of dudes,
Yeah.
and all thing dude, let's walk down the chronological order of events that led to
Chronological?
chronological. Let's go to camera 5, please. I'll try to get the glare right, and so they can see this a little bit better. There we go. Super Jaime documentary. I've got my finger over your name. That's not helpful. And since 420 is coming up after our next show, Monday the 20th, where everyone will celebrate the way you seem to be doing in that picture. I spent maybe, several years enjoying the devil's weed in my youth. And thought on occasion, how long can you really do this?
You mean in your life?
In
How
life.
long can I keep this up in life?
Well, that's not a question I'm posing to you, it's a question I posed to myself.
Right, and you said to yourself,
And I said,
Not
certainly
much
for the
longer.
next several hours. Again,
was there an incident that made you stop?
there wasn't a moment. There was because I am also, again, 102, I went through those heyday. I went all through all the heydays. The gold rush of stand-up comedy and the gold rush of marijuana when it was these bags, these Colombian gold, all these, those things.
Wowie.
Before it was created by a chemist, let's just say that, or nurtured by a chemist. We're talking late teens, early 20s. But it was every day. It was putting off life for me is what it was. I was wanting to be a stand-up since the age of 10, and I started to do a little stand-up when I was 17, 18, live and get paid in front of an audience. And suddenly this wonderful world of marijuana came along and allowed me to just be lazy and dream more while awake and not have to actually pursue life. And one of the things, I mention all of this, not just to freak out my relatives that are watching, but one of the things I really enjoyed about this documentary, Super Jaime, was the sort of commitment not only to educating people about medical marijuana and the laws and how they need to change and what happens when they don't. We certainly saw that in the film. But being forced to smoke, literally forced, by someone who was very open about enjoying it, forced to smoke for 30 days straight. So walk us through this process, because I just
Well, that was
found the
my
whole thing.
idea, so I can't really say that anybody forced me to do it, but I did have a joke in my act where I'd say, if there's a movie called Super Size Me where a guy eats McDonald's for 30 days, why can't there be why can't I make a movie called Super High Me? And,
Which always got a laugh.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, and it's just a silly thing to say. I'd say it would be called Super High Me or Business as Usual.
Right.
Because I'm very open about, my pot smoking in my act. And there's a film called The Comedians of Comedy with Patton and Brian and Zach and Maria that was directed by a guy that's a friend of mine named Mike Blyden.
Mm-hmm.
And at Patton's wedding, I just casually said to Mike Blyden, hey, would you want to make a documentary? And I told him the joke.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, I want to do this.
Wow.
And then he talked to some people that had, put up the money for Comedians of Comedy. And before I knew it, it was really happening. And I kind of got cold feet a little bit because I was like, do I really want to, I'm essentially subjecting myself on purpose into a, documentary or reality type thing where the cameras are going to follow me around. I'm going to be messed up the whole time. We did 30 days first of not smoking at all.
Right.
Because I wanted to show that, how that isn't hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. And then the 30 days of non-stop smoking also turned out to be not that hard. Going into it, I thought, I'm going to just be sick of it after a while. It'd be like, riding the same roller coaster every day or something. Because I don't smoke day in and day out in my normal life. I smoke almost every day. But, there's certainly, I'm not like a wake and baker, every day of the week. It's like you're saying about putting your life on hold. You know, it's like, that's what sort of worked out great for me is that the pot and the comedy have sort of dovetailed into each other in a way where now it's my job to get high all the time. So it's not. So I'm not being lazy as much as I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
It feeds your art, literally.
People will be disappointed. Yeah.
So, well, you've given a perfect example. I've spoken before on the show, and when asked by younger people wanting to get into this crazy business, one of the things is be ready to give your life to it. But also be ready to create your own destiny. If you sit around and wait for the phone to ring, it might.
And that's, that's the sad part about the business is some people get that call and become huge without, necessarily
hitting people up at weddings,
working hard and hitting people up at weddings. But I just think it's important to. That would be a big piece of advice I'd get. When people say, give me advice on how to be a comedian, it's like, well, you just have to get up there and do it.
Absolutely.
Find your way.
A lot.
It's like advice is really not that helpful other than just the advice to get up and do it a lot.
Right.
And but that's a good one to add to it when somebody asks me now.
Create your own destiny.
Just come up
you
with
put
your
yourself
own.
out there. And in fact, you described the cold feet you got afterwards is kind of organic and great, and if not, dare I say, beautiful in the sense that this urge came to you, probably not premeditated. I don't think you would, I'm guessing that you were on your way to the wedding thinking, I'm going to hit that sucker, or weeks before, I might see him at the wedding, I'm going to hit him up. Maybe you did, I don't know. But either way works for me, by the way.
I was just high and drunk and said that to him, and he
next thing you knew,
receptive.
He was receptive, and the money people stepped up. And what did it cost? What did they put in? Couple $100,000?
It's so ridiculous. It cost $420,000 to make.
Right.
I swear that can't be true. That somebody rounded it to that.
420 exactly?
That's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like it's a funny number to say that it costs that much to make, but that's supposedly what it cost is $420,000. And we ran out of money towards the end. I had to put some money into it just to get it finished.
$420?
Yeah, it wasn't much. It was just to buy a few more days of editing. Like, it's amazing how much how much you can accomplish in a few more days of editing.
Right.
And so then it came out, and
Well, so now, but while you're shooting, let's...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, while you're shooting, I noticed that instead of having to inhale pot morning, noon, and night through a joint or a pipe, you decided to get what I guess was called the Volcano?
Volcano vaporizer.
Were you familiar with those before you started the documentary?
I had heard of them, maybe,
Myth, legend.
I think I saw one at a High Times magazine party.
Right.
I saw one, and then so one of the producers of the movie went out and got one from the Volcano, the company that makes the Volcano.
Expensive, are they?
Volcano's like the brand, and they run pretty expensive. They're like, I think $600 or something like that.
Let's call it 420.
But the doctor that gave me my medical marijuana license here in Los Angeles, the license isn't the right word for it. The note that you're supposed to show if there's trouble. It basically says, to whom it may concern.
The note you're
I'm a
supposed
doctor
to
who
show
says, yeah,
if there's trouble.
Yeah, you really carry around a letter.
Of course.
I carry it in my pocket. And the guy, when he gave it to me, he said, "Now you probably want to get a vaporizer because that's a healthier way to smoke." And then he said, "And look at it like this: it's expensive, but it's like, you know, you'd spend that much on a television set, and both of these things bring years of pleasure."
Wow.
So I was like,
the doctor
"You're
or
the
the
best
salesman?"
doctor I've ever." Yeah.
Wow.
That was the extent of the examination, is him explaining to me that I should get a vaporizer. And so then we did, and that I use that a lot in the movie, and then I also use edibles a lot in the movie,
Right.
because you know, you can't smoke when I'm flying around doing shows. Because that was the other mandate in making the movie, is I said I just am going to do all my normal gigs, my TV jobs and my road work and all that stuff. I'm just going to do it all anyway. I'm just going to live my normal life while being high constantly.
Right.
To show that I was hoping that either something disastrous would happen and everyone would go, "See what happens when you're too high," or I would go through it with, you know, flying colors, and,
Right.
and that's what happened.
And what about in terms of the traveling with the edibles that you save? So you're literally potentially becoming a felon every time you're off to do your stand-up gigs?
I wouldn't call it a felony.
I mean, as you travel to states that do consider it that. We have it easy, it's a misdemeanor here, but
Yeah,
you're going to Alabama, you're going to...
I wasn't playing Alabama at any point during the.
You purposely...
I was playing pretty cool places.
Long Beach.
Yeah. No, but like, you know, one of the road gigs that I was a little bit worried about was I played a club in Minneapolis for like 5 nights during the high time. And you could see it in the movie. We go to Mall of America.
Right. That's actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because we happen to have that clip.
That's the clip you picked?
That's the clip we picked.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad
Can't you just show some scenes from Ed Wood?
Nope. No, we've got that clip, and let me know when it's ready, fellas, and then we can talk about it more. It's ready right now. Let's go to it. Funny story. There's no clip. Yeah, the sound we're listening to on the computer.
But that's also a weird place to end the clip. Before I finish the joke.
Did we? Well, I think it might have gone.
It got in the whole thing? You just only heard.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah, that was a time warp for us.
But yes, the Mall of America, you know, when you're walking around in it, it looks not unlike a lot of the major airports that are around the
I've been
country
there.
and the world right now. Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's got that kind of feel to it, but with amusement park rides.
Yeah. No, I was elected mayor there. That's how huge the place is. There's number 9, I'd like to point out, on the Netflix live streaming. Number 9 of all time.
And by all time, they mean since about a year ago when they started.
Exactly.
But that's
impressive.
the exciting part. The exciting part is that my movie came out around the same time they started that.
Yeah.
And it's been in the top 50 ever since.
But also, if I may, they have what now? 50,000 titles, and maybe a tenth of those are available. Whatever the number is, to be number 9 is ridiculously impressive, and congratulations for it. Seriously.
It's like the list is like, you know, Heroes Season 1, The Office Season 1, 30 Rock Season 2. Like, it's all TV shows and then Super High Me. And I think Ratatouille's in there too. But like,
I'm sorry, that's impressive.
That's what people are mostly streaming on the internet is either, you know, sitcoms or movies about pot.
Yeah.
Or movies about rats that can cook.
Well, I'm not going to ask for the difference.
There is no difference.
From Twitter, G2 the Man, at G2 the Man asks, who inspired you when you first began, and who inspires you nowadays? So when you first began, we're talking, you've been doing stand-up 15, 16 years maybe now?
More than that.
Yeah, 20? All right.
Long time.
Okay. A couple of decades we're talking about. Who inspired you when you first started? Guys that were working at the time, I'm guessing, from the people.
Well, when I was a kid, I just, like I said earlier, I just loved stand-up in general, and like SNL, you know, Saturday Night Live, I was on board with that show from that first episode when I believe it was George Carlin hosted it.
So that's irreverent comedy, but the actual art form of stand-up, who were you?
Well, Carlin was huge. That might have been part of the reason I watched that first SNL. It was probably
Right.
between him and the Muppets, because they were both on. I listened to his Class Clown record, especially the 7 Words You Can't Say on TV, over and over again when I was a kid.
Same here.
My parents were very, didn't pay much attention to that sort of thing, or they didn't mind. Like my parents took me to R-rated movies and stuff, and so I had the Cheech and Chong album, Big Bamboo. I listened to that a lot. Bill Cosby, Steve Martin, like all the comics that were huge when I was a kid and a teenager. I would listen to their routines over and over again, but never with the goal of becoming a comic like them. And that's when I moved to LA, I had no intention of becoming a comic, and it took some friends convincing me I should get up and try it. To do it my first time was at the Comedy Store on
So you were being inspired without having made any decision whatsoever to be a stand-up.
Yeah.
It was just for your own personal enjoyment. Had
Yeah,
nothing to do
and
with a career path or...
And I loved all the comics that you'd see constantly on, I really loved the old Letterman show on NBC.
Sure.
And that's where I was exposed to Sam Kinison and Pee Wee Herman and then all of his buddies, like Larry Miller and those guys. And
Witherspoon.
So I just got into stand-up in general. And, over time you start to go, oh, well, that guy's not as good as that. You start to get more of a taste.
A sophisticated palate.
Yeah, and then once you do it, then you get this really crazy, you either love or hate most everything you see.
Yes.
It gets...
The gray area vanishes. And so now, who for me, maybe Galifianakis. So who now for you
That's who inspires you now?
Yeah, because, I see guys... The thing for comedians is always the troublesome thing. Most of what I've talked to is the moment you hear a joke that you love, your first thought is not that you love it. Your first thought is, fuck, I should have wrote that. I should have come up with that.
Well, that's what I like about a lot of stand-up these days is it comes from such a personal place.
Yeah.
Nothing Louis C.K. says do I say, oh, I should have wrote that.
Right.
Because he's just talking about his kids and his wife and his very specific set of circumstances in a way that, people can relate to and laugh at. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do with my stand-up.
Right.
But Zach is definitely a good example of somebody who because he's got those great one-liners.
Sure.
That just, that he comes up with, one after the other. And when he says them, those I get a little jealous of, for sure.
Yeah, and in fact, the reason I mentioned him was because I agree with you. It is no longer about, I wish I had written that. It becomes, there's something I could never do. There's something I wouldn't do. There's something that's not in my wheelhouse, and therefore, it tickles me to no end that much more, and that's the gap.
Yeah, that's when I first started doing stand-up, that was like the thing that made it hard for me to make the leap into really doing it full time.
Right.
Was not only having to make a living, I had to do jobs and stuff. I worked as a tour guide at Universal Studios for a while and things like that.
No, you didn't. Did you ever see Slade and
That's
his
true.
daughter at the steps of the...
No, but I was sitting over
Psycho
there
House?
when he was talking about the Psycho House. I remembered the corny joke. I was totally into the corny jokes when giving the tour.
Jamie, first of all, can you imagine Doug Benson giving the tour on the oh my God.
It was crazy because I would do jokes for myself all the time, and but the one that you hear certain jokes.
Sure.
It's like the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland.
Well, that's why I asked.
Pick and choose.
Yeah.
You kind of pick and choose the jokes you like, and one that I picked up from another tour guide, but then said at every tour is I was like, see that little trail leading up to the Psycho House? That's the psychopath. And then, and then just start, talking about the next thing. Don't even try to wait for a laugh or anything,
Well, that's, yeah. That's all about the puns.
So,
that job is all about the puns.
But then that's what became difficult for me to make the leap into really becoming a stand-up, is I would work with these people or see these people who are like, I'm never going to be that good. I'm never going to be as funny as that.
Right.
Why am I even bothering to try?
Right.
And then, then eventually, after a while, you start to learn that, yes, you can be as funny as them.
In your own way.
And also, it doesn't matter. It's not a competition.
It's a very, very long marathon, not a sprint. Yeah, that's the other thing I try to pass along, and finding your own voice for all of us. It's all about finding your own voice. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And when you do, you realize that much more that it's not a competition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever lose any sleep over the idea of someone stealing one of my jokes, because why would anyone say the stupid shit that comes out of my mouth?
Well, because it's hilarious.
Here's a joke no one will ever steal. Banking is really scary right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Why?
That's why Bank of America should use this slogan. B of A, be very of A. That's a joke. When I say it in a comedy club, some people laugh, but the whole audience is never going to laugh at that joke.
I guarantee that joke is stolen before the day is up. That joke is fantastic. Are you kidding? That is the exact...
I'm telling you, but there's a lot of people just stare at me. You have to have
be very of a? That joke's out the window.
You have a very specific reference point in your life. You have to be like really know about that the slogan for the movie The Fly was "Be afraid, be very afraid." Like teenagers today don't have any idea what they don't even know in space. No one can hear you could scream. Like the references get shuffled away in such a way that,
Well, the world I live in, we live for references. So that one will be used constantly. That last question I offered up was from Twitter. Mm-hmm. So I want to give one that comes from the chat room that's at the actual Kevin Pollak's chatshow.com.
Change it up. Let's do it.
Right? Did you just show up until they gave you a diploma in order to leave? This is about your time at the college in San Diego before moving to L.A. Did you graduate from this college? Because I graduated in 9 months. My friends called it dropping out, but I insist to this day I graduated. Did you graduate?
I got a thing, yeah. I didn't go to the ceremony, but I got there's some sort of diploma sitting somewhere with my name on it. I forget, they call it like the Bachelor of Arts degree or something like that, at a junior college that I did it in 2.5 years in San Diego. And then it was after that and not having any money to go try to get into a good school and not having, my grades in community college were good. Because that's when I started applying myself. In high school, I was like mostly just into being in the drama club and I didn't care about math and history. So my grades in school were terrible. And turning it around at the junior college isn't really enough to get a scholarship.
That's not what they go. The people at Yale do. I see here you do very well in San Diego community.
Yeah, so
that is impressive.
It takes a lot of cash, and my parents were always really good to me, and took care of me. They raised me, in a nice environment, but we were never wealthy. So it just came. It was just I just made the leap. I was just like, I'm just going to move to LA and just start trying to do show business stuff.
Start life.
Yeah, and I was. Had already started, like I said earlier, I'd already started visiting LA to go to the Improv and see the comics that I liked, and then I also would drive up to LA to do extra work in movies. And then once I moved to LA, I did a ton of that. I've been in as many movies as you have, but rarely speaking.
You buried.
I can point myself out in some really famous movies.
You buried the lead.
Doug
Benson has been in 50 movies as an extra?
I've done so many things, Kevin. But
well, if I may, we only have another 2 hours. You had better start sharing.
Oh, there's so much to share.
Now, if
I worked for Michael Jackson for a while. I was a boom operator in porn for a while.
Oh, well, we were all that. But I worked for Michael Jackson for a while.
Yeah, I was like a PA for his company.
Mm-hmm. And how often did the glove one actually come past you?
He'd cruise in and look at some pictures that they were drawing of things. It was around the time of Captain EO, that Disney attraction that he did with Francis Ford Coppola.
Sure.
Which I am also in. And
one of the dancers?
One of the dancers, because Coppola went way over budget on this shitty, horrible 3D movie that they made. Mm-hmm. And he was so far over budget that they couldn't afford the union dancers anymore. And so they just, got
I was kidding. You were really a dancer.
Yeah, they got me and a bunch of other people to wear the dancer outfits.
And stand around?
At the end of the movie, there's no choreography when we all celebrate that Angelica Houston's been turned into a beautiful fairy princess.
I think we all remember that.
We all jump around and dance around. It's all just freestyle. There's no choreography. And so every time I go to Disneyland when that was playing there, I would point myself out to my friends and they'd all die laughing because I was just dancing around like a complete idiot. It wasn't good.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
You love that?
My mother made me see it all the time, and I was afraid of it.
Okay.
The one thing I could never get over was that between Francis Coppola and Michael Jackson, they decided that the right line reading, when he says, when they crash the spaceship, and it hits the honing beacon, And Michael Jackson goes, "We crashed right into it." And that made it in the movie. The movie cost, $30 million to make and is only, 10 minutes long.
We crashed
And there's
right
a horrible line reading.
into it.
We crashed right into it. I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Jamie was saying that her mom made her go see it every single time, which I'm guessing forced you to not enjoy it so much.
I vaguely remember, and I remember there were a lot of like puppets in it or something. I was afraid of
Were
it.
there a lot
There
of
was a little
puppets in
thing
it?
that flew around, like it would fly out in front of the audience and be like, "Michael Schmirkle," and and there's a scene in the movie where it's on Michael Jackson's shoulder, and for a brief second you could see the guy operating it. You could see like the guy's arm.
So they spent $30 million. Nobody was really paying attention. Francis had started making wine.
Yeah.
All right. That's...
But maybe you've heard of Blade Runner, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I'm in both of those.
Okay. Now, the next time you're here, when we prepare our clips,
Oh God, that'd be great.
could we actually find moments?
Especially on the Fast Times, the TV version now that they play. At the end when the one kid goes over to Jennifer Jason Leigh and talks to her at the pizza place, he then leaves, and you know how because they have to cut stuff out for TV, they end up throwing stuff back in.
Sure.
They didn't make it into the theatrical cut. So like that scene goes on for much longer. So you could spot me briefly in the theatrical version, but in the TV version, I'm one of those idiot extras, because this was like one of the first extra jobs I did, where I'm just running around trying to get into spots where the camera will see me while they're doing this tracking shot in the mall. So like you just see me wandering around the background like the entire scene.
If the camera sees you.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And
I
you
saw Jim Belushi, your buddy Jim Belushi, which I'd say that about any actor, because you're probably buddies with all of them.
3 degrees.
But he did that in the movie The Fury. There's a scene on the beach. He was living in Chicago, and he showed it on Letterman. If you're watching The Fury, you could see like a young, fat Jim Belushi, like just running around in the background,
Trying
like,
to be
just trying
seen.
to be on camera.
Wow. And Tom Selleck was a corpse in the movie Coma or whatever. There's all there's all kinds of this.
Some would argue he was a corpse in Lassiter, and he was a corpse in every other horrible movie he made. That poor guy, like, couldn't do Indiana Jones,
Right.
because he was tied into Magnum, and then they must have made 5 or 6 movies with him, like really trying to make him the next big action star, and they were all so terrible.
Did everyone know that it was supposed to be Tom Selleck for the Indiana Jones movies? Did everybody know that? That's fairly good. Sam Levine says yes. All the other 37 people in the room said no, we didn't know that. It's a bit of a bombshell.
It's a good one. It's a good poll, because
That's a nice
I
poll.
didn't even know I knew it.
All right.
I make up some of these things. That was part of the thing about being a tour guide, is that the trams would break down sometimes, and the rule was you had to keep talking. You had to filibuster. You couldn't just let the people sit in a hot, quiet tram. So you would have to just talk.
And what would you go to
constantly.
in that situation?
I think it was probably like a story about Steven Spielberg, because like when you're on the lot,
Bruce
at
is
any
on the
point
tour.
you can say Steven Spielberg has his offices here, but when you drive right by Amblin and there's a big logo with the ET and the
better
bike,
not say
you
it.
cannot say that's
Yeah.
where Steven Spielberg works.
Right.
You can't bring it up.
No.
This is the weirdest rule.
And Bruce, the shark, is there. Was there at the time.
Well, and when I was there,
Look out! Look out! Look out! Oh, he
Yeah.
almost got you. One of those
exactly.
kind of things.
Yeah, you could either really play it up, or you could do the I'm not, really into this version, And
Oh,
but
really? You could. That was an option.
but you'd get like just like Jungle Cruise, you can just be like, oh, there's Schweitzer Falls named after Professor Falls. You could just throw it away if you wanted to.
That's one of our favorites.
Yeah, it's a good joke. And every time I go behind a waterfall, I say, oh, look, it's the backside of water, because they say that in that as well.
Wow, he's got all the best bits.
Yeah. I used to do a bit on stage where I would just wander around the stage, just repeating lines from the ride, as if people were on it, and people would love it. It was a cheat because I didn't write any of it,
Right.
but people would love it because it's like, oh, it's fun to watch somebody recreate that or whatever.
That was one of those jobs that always seemed fantastic to me. And I remember one of the very first premieres I went to was on the lot at Universal. And where everyone parked the cars, they had us take trams over to the theater where they were showing the movie. And I forced my way up to the front of the tram and was a pretend tour guide for the ride from the parking lot to the thing. And for whatever reason, it literally tickled me more than 10 of the 24 Tonight shows with Johnny Carson and I ever did, as one of those cheap,
It
ridiculous
is
thrills.
fun to like just hold a microphone and talk to an entire
Yeah,
people in a vehicle.
right?
Yeah, it's fun.
And everyone from Twitter is asking about the marijuana logs. DJ Ramen Noodles at Twitter.
Of course.
Of course, right? Are you shocked by that?
Yeah.
As well as I don't get the names from the
DJ
chat.
Ramen Noodles is either huge stoner or very broke or both.
All right.
And yeah, the Marijuana Logs was an off-Broadway play that I co-wrote with two other comics, Arj Barker and Tony Kameen. This was, after we'd all become stand-ups and before Super High Me. Arj came up with this idea, and now I've been told that someone else had suggested it to him. Just the pun of saying, "Oh, vagina monologues, you should do the marijuana logs."
Right.
And then Arj said it to Tony, and Tony said it to me, and I'm the one that said, "Yes, we should do it."
Right.
And got it going, and we performed it in L.A. a bunch of times, and we took it out to comedy clubs, and then eventually it became an off-Broadway show, and it played for a year.
Did you do the
And-
production for a year?
Yeah, well, came and went a little bit. We got understudies
Right.
because it was brutal
Right.
doing it 7 times a week, and it had lots of places where we could ad lib and goof around, but it was, it was
Scripted.
still pretty strictly scripted because of the lighting cues and stuff.
Right.
So it became became less and less fun to do as time went on.
Felt like a job.
Yeah, but as jobs go, living in New York, they put me up in an apartment like a block from the theater.
Nice.
And it was a crazy year.
Yeah.
I had a good time.
And-
And I'd never lived in New York really. I'd visited a lot, but I'd never really lived there, so it was fun to do that for a year.
And when was that?
That must have been 2004.
Sam Levine says 2004.
I think he's right.
Well, he is. That's why he's here.
Yeah.
Of course he's right.
But yeah, so it was a popular show, and you could still get the
where can we see
CDs
this?
on ComedyCentralRecords.com, and also there's a book called The Marijuana Logs: Everything About Pot That We Could Remember, and it's
Everything about pot
very
that we
thin-
can remember?
We could remember. It's a very thin tome. It's more of a pamphlet, and it's available in bookstores. They put it in the cultural studies section.
Of course they do. Where would you put it?
Humor. But I guess kids. There's lots of childish humor books. There's lots of things that kids would look for in the humor section.
Sure.
So they were smart.
That's where the 10
put over
plagues-
in cultural studies, and yeah, you can still get that on Amazon. I think it's still available.
Right on.
But there'll be a reunion someday, probably.
Will you let us know,
Sure.
please?
You'll be the first person I call.
I doubt that.
When the subject comes up, though, people are like, "Why don't you do the marijuana logs again?"
Right.
And I go, "Haven't you seen my act?"
Right.
I'm still doing
it, right.
It's still a lot about pot.
Well, your experience working on the Super High Me documentary, sort of creation and child of yours that you saw to its lifespan, what sort of follow-up ideas? I'm sure people have suggested that to you, that you carry this on. What,
Yeah, do something else.
Yeah. What are the thoughts there?
Whenever somebody suggests something, it's horrible. It's like do heroin for 30 days, or crystal meth, or drink, or whatever. Like there's some guys in somewhere in England did something called Super McGuinness Me, I think. Mm-hmm. But that would I wouldn't even last a day, drinking Guinness all day long.
Right.
And
didn't
there was also
necessarily-
a thing in England, Super Botox Me,
Oh, my.
where a woman got too much,
Yeah, that is.
Botox on purpose.
That's just a bad idea. And may she rest in peace. But I actually meant as a filmmaker. I mean, you've started something now.
Oh yeah, I've definitely got to come up with a follow-up. It just hasn't,
Yeah, I don't even
what
mean a
people have
documentary.
suggested to me
Right,
have all
stinks.
been bad ideas. I don't want to do another 30 days of anything.
No, and I don't think you should. I think
Yeah.
you should take this to the next level. And
Well, that's the other suggestion. Smoke for a whole year. Oh well, it wasn't hard enough to edit down 30 days into a feature.
Right.
let's just shoot me going around for a year.
Right.
But I'm working on it. I'm tinkering around with some concepts, but basically it'll be just something lower concept. It'll be like just something with me in it, and smoking pot.
Right. Okay.
No grand experiment like this movie was.
Right. Well, you know, the what was the movie Pineapple Express? Mm-hmm. So-called pot movies are being made for comedic purposes with a story and characters and a plot, and so
I could do that.
My question is, if this were to be your niche, God forbid you should become as popular and enjoy the luxuries that Cheech and Chong did in their heyday.
God forbid.
Yeah. I mean, does that ever cross your mind as something that? And I certainly don't want to pigeonhole you into this arena.
Well, that's the funny thing is I did a little guest turn on How I Met Your Mother, where I'm a customs agent.
Nice.
And one character's trying to go back to America, but he's clearly nervous and holding. But I'm eating cereal out of a box, and it's me. So I just like let him through, and they cast me without even they didn't call me in like, let's get the famous pothead. They just like saw some actors, and I was one of them, and I know how to play that.
Right.
So they cast me, and then a guy that I knew that was working on the show that wasn't involved in the casting process, when I got there, was like, oh, hey, that's a good choice having you do this.
Yeah.
But, of course, the next day, my phone rings, and it's Jeff Garlin, and he just laughing his ass off about, now you're pigeonholed, enjoy it. That's what you're going to do all the time.
Right.
Is always be the pot guy. And,
right.
I'm fine with that, as long as the material's funny.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of the sad part to me about Cheech and Chong is that they had some really great stuff, but then it just got stretched out into
too thin. Yeah. How many times?
The Corsican brothers.
Right.
Starts to not make sense.
that would be the shark jumping.
Yeah. So I want to try to keep it more, a little bit more focused than that, not just jump into anything that's a pot thing.
Well, I'd certainly be remiss if not scolded by 2 or 3 people who have written in. If I don't ask at this point if you have anything you'd like to say to the people of Canada.
People from Canada writing in, or people from America? Because people from America were fairly not upset by the whole incident.
I watched this,
or even know about it. Really, it's been very quiet in here in the States.
Yeah, I watched this appearance you made on a show called Red Eye.
It's called Red Eye.
Yeah, on Fox News, which must have been a gas for you, just that alone.
Well, I'd been a fairly regular participant on that show because even though it's on Fox News, and I certainly don't agree with much of what is said on Fox News,
it's very irreverent and
yeah. But I felt like I was like how they have conservatives on MSNBC.
Right.
I felt like I'll just go in there and be the liberal comedian, and they every time I was on, they let me say whatever I want because when I first started doing it was obviously during the Bush administration.
Right.
And if I make jokes about Bush, they'd laugh. Like it's just a very I don't want to say sophomoric because a lot of what they say is clever, but it's just like it's a silly show.
Right.
It's on in the middle of the night, but it's on Fox News. So
their viewership's down to 3.
Canadians aren't thrilled with America in general, but especially the right-wing America.
Right.
And so there was a subject on the show one night when I was on where, they just throw these news stories at us and we just sit around and riff on them, essentially like I do with pop culture stories for Best Week Ever.
Right.
And so the story was that the Canadian military wants to sit out of Afghanistan for a year. They want to take like a year-long break because they just need to regroup.
Also, I thought their idea of doing that was fantastic. They probably saved themselves about $300 billion by taking a year off.
Well, they shouldn't be in the war at all.
Right.
Was my take on it.
Right.
So, me being they constantly make jokes about me being a stoner. They're always plugging Super High me. So it was always a fun show for me to do. And I came on, and when that story came up, I was like, I didn't even know Canada was fighting in the war. And, isn't
that the place you go to get away from war?
Yeah, that's where you go to get away from fighting, which is a cliche that they've heard over and over again.
Oh, they can't get enough.
And do not appreciate.
No, they don't.
Even though Canadian comics make jokes about that all the time.
Right.
But the trouble is, this aired in the middle of the night on a Monday here in the States.
Right.
And then on like Thursday or Friday, I think Friday, 4 young men were shipped home to Canada in boxes because they lost their lives in Afghanistan. One of them was 18. And then that night, somebody took the clip from the Fox News show.
And it all became your fault.
Without explaining that I'm a comedian or that the show's a comedy or that everyone's just joking around. And also, the other people did say more harsh things than I did about the
Way
Canadian military.
more harsh, and also, if I may, wildly less funny. I thought the other people were obnoxious and not funny at all. When I watch it, that's just one man talking. However, suddenly the Prime Minister is calling.
Well, suddenly it becomes like all these people are, they're either extremely saddened or very angry at me for what looks like I'm just having a ball talking about the Canadian military when this horrible thing just happened to them.
Yeah, the timing of it.
The timing was horrible, and so that's why I was like, immediately, once I figured it all out, because at first it was like, really, it took them 5 days to get this mad? Like, I didn't know that it became a YouTube sensation in Canada, because I didn't get a single angry letter from anyone, Canadian or American, after it aired on TV.
Sure.
It was 5 days later, it was on the weekend, when everybody in Canada was watching it and everyone was pissed.
And also,
So
technically, when they put the connection together with this glib conversation among people being irreverent and 4 people coming home dead.
Yeah, and I was playing the Edmonton comic strip the next week.
Well,
So it became, do not come to Canada or we will murder your face. You will die if you come to Canada. And, people were so upset that, and then like you said, the Prime Minister demanded an apology from all of us on the show.
sure.
And so I went on CTV, a local,
Yeah.
a Canadian TV program with some guy named Graham something. And I stood in a studio in Los Angeles and just talked right to camera. Couldn't even see them. Didn't even have a monitor with them on it. And then he proceeded to kind of grill me about it a little bit more than I thought a newsman would. Like he kept saying, but those were horrible things you were saying. And I'm like,
thought it
yeah,
was
I know.
Murrow, yeah.
I apologize.
Right.
I'm sorry. It was bad timing. As a comedian, I never set out to make anybody angry at me, especially an entire country, and especially people that are grieving. Like in my entire career, I've never made jokes on stage about somebody that just died in front of someone else that cared about the person that just died.
Yeah, no one stops and tries to do the math themselves and say, is this person
Yeah.
that heinous? Larry Miller, I don't know if you remember his story, that he was playing a college and he did a bit in his act always about how strange it was to run into a teacher from high school or a professor from college 20, 25 years afterwards, and you still call them Mr. Johnson, as if they were still your teacher.
Yeah.
And, you'd run into him somewhere at a grocery store. Hey, Mr. Johnson, remember that time we set you on fire? Well, Larry was 45 minutes into destroying at a college performance, absolutely owning them for 45 minutes, and he did that joke, and for the next 12 minutes it was cricket, silence. And he couldn't figure out what the hell happened. He gets off stage, and the organizers came to him and said, "We can't believe you did that. What's the matter with you?" 6 weeks before, a professor, Mr. Johnson, had in fact died in a fire. The notion that these idiots thought that Larry was Satan and decided that that would be a good
Yeah.
joke to do
Yeah.
is what this reminds me of. The fact that they would actually think that you would sit there and be glib, and also the fact that you had to apologize. That makes me crazy. Was it just you and one other person? There was a panel of 4 people when the show went out live.
Well, there's like a lady from Fox News,
Right.
who, everything she said was, she wasn't necessarily trying to be funny, so like...
Good, because she failed horribly.
But she came off as kind of, she's just more there to be, a right-wing, personality.
That's why I like
Like, they always have a hot lady on that show. And then...
the hot conservative.
And then there's this dude, Bill, that always sits like between me and the hot lady, who is just like, he's just like one of the writers on the show, and also just says incredibly silly things the whole time. Also doesn't seem to be, when watching the show, I don't think he never seemed that conservative to me. And then there's Greg, the host, who did do an apology, but the apology was kind of like, "I'm sorry you misunderstood." And he said, this is a satirical show, and,
Right.
I'm sorry that you just didn't get it.
You flat out...
I just said I apologize because, it's like if I was in a comedy club and somebody yelled out, if I said something like, "Oh, Canada, I go up there and take a nap instead of fighting." If somebody yelled out, I'm from Canada and I just lost my son in the war, I wouldn't then proceed to continue. I would apologize to them. I would say, "I'm sorry, that's a horrible coincidence
Right.
that you would come out to a comedy club after your kid just died or whatever." But that's the great thing about comedy clubs is you can be pretty much sure that everyone that's there wants to have a good time and isn't grieving at the
Or
time
two
of
votes.
showing up. Or if they are, Well, that's, I got another great one was Dave Attell, who's another guy I really admire.
Right.
I think he's really funny, and he's sort of like to alcohol what I am to pot. And
Uh-huh.
he and I were working together at the Improv in Vegas. And he does a lot of crowd work and talking to people and stuff. And he started talking to some woman in the audience, and she said, oh, you're making me laugh. This is so good for me because, my husband just died recently. And Dave goes, oh, really? What day did he die on? She goes, the 22nd. And he goes, somebody go down and put $100 on 22
Wow.
right now.
Wow.
And she laughed, and everyone laughed, and it was great.
Right.
But, those kind of things, when you say that stuff, it could,
Yes.
totally go another way on you.
Yes, as opposed to apologizing.
But especially with the jokes about the Canadian military, like people would write to me angry, like, why are you perpetuating these horrible stereotypes and cliches? And I'm like, because I'm a dumb comic, and that's all I know.
Right.
They're like, why didn't you do more research into
Oh my God.
the Canadian military? And I'm like, because
That's what we do.
I thought I was just being silly. I didn't think that I was, And then when I went on their show, the guy knew nothing about me or my career. He didn't do any research on me.
Of course not.
Like if you knew I was a stoner, you wouldn't take anything I said seriously. But it doesn't say that on Fox News underneath you.
Doesn't say
It
stoner?
doesn't say stoner.
What do we have on the lower third for Doug right now?
It said, in the clip that they used, it said, we'll be at the UCB Theater in New York. So they got phone calls and letters saying,
The UCB Theater
do
in New
not
York?
let this guy perform there.
Hey, there you go. Right?
Perfect.
You like that one better?
Better than what?
All the others.
Better than all the others, yes. That's the perfect one. Nobody ever does that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, fans of Fox News, not fans of Fox News, but fans of Red Eye, then I got letters from them about, like, you shouldn't have apologized, why you threw, because I said I'll probably never be on that show again.
Right.
Which is like, it's not like I'm running and hiding. It's more like it finally reached a breaking point where it's
Right.
like, what's more important, being on TV or, being somewhere where you want to be and where because every time I did Red Eye, I'd get a letter from somebody saying, how could you be on that show? And I'd go, because I go out there and tell my jokes and they're nice. Everybody at Fox News is always very nice to me. So
Right.
it's weird. It was a really weird thing.
Yeah.
Because Canadians were really, really pissed. But then just as fast seemed to have gotten over it. Like they appreciated the apology, and the Prime Minister said, I accept the apology.
That's the part I'm glad you got to, because that is, I think, an important part, also in terms of your personal voyage with this particular.
Yeah, well, the knee-jerk reaction is say, aren't we fighting for freedom of speech?
Right.
But you can't say that to people when they're mad,
No.
and you just made fun of their dead soldiers, which is
Right.
what they felt I was
Well, to
doing.
rise to the level that you did and take the lumps and say I'm sorry and acknowledge that the timing of it was such, here now, but at the time just say flat out.
Well, we haven't ever really discussed the timing that much up in Canada. Like as far as I know, everybody just thinks that that I was just
They still
insanely
think-
ill-informed and said that stuff,
Right.
and then apologized for it, which I did. The apology was sincere, but I'm also like, saying
You said it on a Monday.
saying
and
you
the-
should have never been mad at me because I didn't mean any offense.
Yeah,
at any
the
point.
two things are completely and utterly unconnected, and they were connected by the media.
Or just people on, like, that's the whole internet thing is crazy, because it was really just became like a YouTube sensation. And there's pages on the internet I can't go to because I don't want to read post after post, like on my Facebook page.
No.
And on YouTube, there's post after post, of people saying horrible things about me because of the horrible things I
Where could people
allegedly
go?
said.
Where could people go to see? No, I'm kidding. When you write a book, would you consider calling it "Or We Will Murder Your Face"? Would you mind? That's
I
just a
wouldn't
suggestion
mind.
I have for you.
Or maybe that's my next CD title.
Hello. I'm just saying. I'm going to put it
That's a
out
good
there.
one.
That's a gift.
We will murder your face.
Yeah. Well, you said it. I'm just reminding you that it's something out of
Well,
context.
that's my whole act.
Pretty
is
damn
people
delicious.
reminding me of things that I said.
Well.
Whenever I come up with a good line, somebody tells me later, "Oh, you should say that again."
Yeah.
Did I tell you about the slogan I thought of for the Whole Foods supermarket chain?
Please.
I twittered it, of course.
Please.
But the new slogan for Whole Foods should be "For Your Food Hole."
Again, these are keepers. You can't just throw these out there.
I do them, but it's just funny how like sometimes you have to take the hits. Sometimes you have to tell a joke that only 8 or 10 people are going to laugh, but they're going to laugh really hard while everyone else sits.
By the way, why are those the jokes that we tend to love the most?
Because we hear everything.
Yeah.
They only hear what they see in the shows that they go to.
Right.
They're more selective than we are.
Yeah. Well, I have something that's in it's not a tag, it's just a sentence within the small paragraph that the bit lives, where the bit lives. And that one little sentence that is part of the story kills me each and every time. And for some ridiculous reason, I still think after saying it, that running monologue that goes in our mind while we're performing.
Yeah.
There's rumors that Leno does 4-digit multiplication in his mind while he's doing his act. That's not a guy who's bored. Every time I say that sentence and get past it, that voice says, they didn't laugh again. I love that joke. I love that line. It's not even a joke.
But that's the great thing about, comedy's been deconstructed to the point now where I will do jokes about how much they're not liking my jokes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like after that B of A joke, my next line is usually something to the effect of, a lot of comics work really hard on their jokes, but I smoke pot. That's what I do.
I see.
And then I come up with stuff you don't understand. That kind of thing.
You pad it, you tag it. All right, let's see if there's anything else on the interwebs of interest. They want me to get to Lon Chaney Jr. in 3 degrees. Sammy, work on that for my little wrap-up, if you would, please. Sammy on the iPhone can do all the homework. It's not important that I know the track, just that the track exists. I'm sure you would agree.
You got to be able to get to it. Any actor, like they're trying to throw you off with people that are like
old,
super old, old-timey. But the thing is they always made something in their
70s.
Late years that had younger actors in it
young
that
John
you could
Wayne.
start to connect to.
Yeah, that's how it worked. That's how it worked with Stan Laurel. Would you come back? Did you have a good time?
I had a great time.
Excellent. It's just a conversation, and it ends up on the interwebs.
I love it.
Or Intervision. I'm trying to coin this word. Apparently it's the name of a company, so I can't really copyright it, but Intervision is what I'm suggesting.
You're just going to coin it.
Yep. It's the future, and it's here. Do you want to give a shot at the Larry King game for shits and giggles, since it is part and parcel of the show?
Well, in my head just now I was thinking I should say something horrible about Canada as Larry King. But,
why not fuel
be terrible.
and fandom flame?
No, but I thought of one earlier, and I will try it. Do I just do it right to the camera?
Do it right to your camera.
Like
you are
with
indeed.
the suspenders on.
That's
and
it. That's it.
Weird alien head. And the way he's kind of like, his head's kind of down, but he's still looking into camera somehow.
He's part bug.
It's freaky.
Yep.
He's Dr. Cockroach in Monsters vs. Aliens. Yes. They should have gotten his voice instead of Hugh Laurie. Okay, so... I figured out a cure for cancer, but I forgot where I wrote it down. Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kalamazoo? Shit, Kalamazoo. If I'd have said Kalamazoo right.
Thank you so much, Doug. I look forward to having you back on. And Super Jaime, of course. We invite everyone to check this out.
Yeah,
so that
television debut's coming up. You know that, right?
When is it debuting?
It's going to be on the G4 network, which is in the thousands on most people's cable dial.
All right.
And it's called G4, but it's going to be on 420.
Nice.
G4 420.
So a week from tomorrow, for those of you watching live and those of you watching after the fact, do the math on your own, please.
10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, Central and Mountain, don't get it.
Literally.
They literally do not receive it.
Well, I think they don't understand it.
No, it's probably earlier in those time zones.
Yeah, of course. Well, they can do. People were, I'm on the Twitter and tweeting about what time the show is, and I'm not going to list. And people are saying, "What's the GMT?" I'm having a tough time with the sliding scale. Really, that's what I'm going to help you with? You want me to help you with the GMT time?
You could help them.
I need a cup of tea. It's midnight. We're on at midnight in GMT, live. I hope you come back. I look forward to watching you and joining you on stage at the UCB Theater, or now you're doing at Largo?
We've moved over to Largo, the Benson Interruption, that's
right.
what it's called, and it's now, tomorrow night will be the first performance at Largo, which is a nice big theater. So
you tweeted that you
had to pack them in.
Stumbled onto, lucked out into this lineup. Do you want to, for the couple thousand people that are watching live, do you dare throw it out now? And when people get on iTunes after the fact, it'll be too late.
Well, part of the charm of my show is when I ask you to do it, I also understand if you
secret.
have to cancel at the last minute. And then if you do, then you're not the bad guy. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes I'll bring it up on stage because it's funny to tell the audience so-and-so is going to be here, but he canceled. But
I can dig
I
that.
keep it secret for that reason, but also because, I've got a lot of good friends that are great comics that are not particularly famous or only kind
Sure,
of famous.
sure.
And I'm going to showcase them as well.
Right.
And it starts to become this thing like where people go, well, who's on it this time? Like they
Right.
pick and choose which ones they're going to come to.
Right.
So I make the whole thing a surprise. But
I like
just
all of
because-
your
Just to
reasons.
give you an exclusive, though.
But I like all of your reasons very, very much.
I'll give you an exclusive.
People say that this is not a camaraderie, this art form of stand-up comedy. One of the reasons I wanted to have you and Bobby on, which I will address in my closing remarks, is that the camaraderie that exists in this art form is like sharing a foxhole in any war, and never forgetting, the times and the struggles and what we've been through. So,
And also never having to actually fight in a war.
bingo.
Another thing about comedy.
And being in a
But,
foxhole.
Yeah, but the the exclusive I'll give you is that, and that's what I tweeted about today when I said I've lucked into a great lineup, because
Yes.
I had 5 great people lined up, and then I got the call today from the formerly mentioned Louis C.K.
Oh, nice.
saying that he wants, so he's got something he's working on that he wants to,
One of the funniest
he
guys
likes to do
working.
a lot of stage time. Yeah, he's great.
One of the absolute
So-
funniest guys.
So I'll say that he's going to be there, and I'll also say that he's also can be a little flaky. So come at your own risk if you're coming just for him. But,
All right.
But it's going to be a great lineup, and of course you will be participating in it
Soon.
at some point.
I would love to. Yeah, I had a great time, and I would love to do the interruption, which I haven't done before. I was freaked out as I still am with the notion. I've seen it live, and I understand that it's not as harrowing for the performers as the concept suggests.
You just have to.
Because you play
it's
along.
all about going with it.
Yeah, you don't actually interrupt to
I'm
say
not
your
heckling
jokes
as much
stink.
as I'm
Right.
just
Right.
trying to keep it.
I
so
can't
that
believe you
we're
did Shatner. I
saying
thought you were
funny
going to do
things.
Christopher Walken there, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Or or just sort of guiding it in certain ways. Like if there's something I want to hear,
Right.
some joke I like, because I always like. Todd Glass does the show.
Love him too.
And he does. Have you ever seen him do Rodney Dangerfield telling Mitch Hedberg jokes?
Oh, my God. Well,
It is so funny. But Todd can only remember 2 or 3 Mitch Hedberg jokes. Like if he could just memorize 10 of them, he could just rail through them, and it would be the funniest bit ever. But it's still pretty damn funny.
oh, my God, that's brilliant.
Hey, I don't do a good Dangerfield, but he goes, somebody's like, hey, you want a frozen banana? I said, no, but I'll take a regular banana later.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But it's like doing those kind of jokes with Rodney's voice. It's like,
Right.
it's perfect.
That's genius.
it probably worked the other way around, too, Mitch doing
Yeah, I mean, it
Rodney
helps
jokes.
that they both did technically what would be referred to as one-liners.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
one-liners that were often
One was deep
self-deprecating.
and the other was very shallow. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. And
Thank
I
you.
look forward to you coming back. We're only 4 weeks old, so...
Yeah, I always have a ton of things to plug
All right, well,
and
as you probably realize,
a lot
this
of
is
stories to tell.
much more conversation than plugging, and I thank you for participating in it.
Do you think Bobby Slayton would ever say, here's a story that's not so great, but I'm going to tell it anyway? everything he said today was like, here's a great story. And then, some of them were really good, but
None of them are actually great. That's brilliant. Oh, man. Look forward to seeing you again always.
I look
and,
forward to hearing your closing comments.
Okay, good. Please, thank you. Doug Benson, everybody. Well, this has been a great way to spend Easter for myself. I just hope those of you watching live, it helped ease your pain. I don't even know what that means of Easter because it's such a sad holiday. No, it's the resurrection. Was it Bobby that was saying the Good Friday? Yeah.
What's so good about it?
Yeah, what's so good about it? The guy died. So yes, my thanks to both Doug Benson and Bobby Slayton, 2 of your funnier human beings representing the art form of stand-up comedy, doing it in wildly different ways. And the art form of stand-up comedy is one that I've participated in the majority of my life, and I keep saying art form because it's rarely, if ever, considered that. And in the movies as well, the Golden Globes added Best Musical or Comedy to their Best Film and Best Actor and Best Actress categories as a way to broaden it. The Academy themselves have rarely given out awards to comedians for just being funny or funny movies for just being funny. It seems to be the bastard child of showbiz. And every actor I've ever met who was indeed fascinated by the art form, I could drop a list of names and they'd all be well known, if not annoying to hear, had the same take, which is how do you do that? How do you stand there and just talk for an hour? To live and die by one's own wits on a moment-by-moment basis with a room full of strangers is one of my absolute joys in life. And most people I've met who do it find it to be just as thrilling. The community out there that enjoys the art form and has followed it for most of their lives tend to be the people I enjoy being with most. And I've surrounded myself with them in my own personal life. We collect our friends, I believe, by their sense of humor, and weed out our family members if they don't get the joke. It's a big part of my life, and I appreciate you allowing me to have it dominate a part of your life here today. I want to thank the crew, the fine crew who enjoyed and endured our 4th installment here. Their names will be coming up on the screen momentarily. Take your time to read them. In fact, hit pause a couple times just to really? Jamie Foxx works on the show? Some of the names, well, you'll see what they do, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate everything they do for the show as we're finding our way in this particular medium that I call Intervision. And I look forward to the show next week, some of the upcoming guests. Next week, of course, we have our first Academy Award winner. At the age of 27, he won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay in a movie called The Usual Suspects. Thank you. And also on that show, my first female guest. I can't believe it took us 5 shows to get our first gal, but thank God Paget Brewster said yes last night, and she'll be on the show this coming Sunday. She also brilliantly funny and currently on a big television hit called Criminal Minds. We'll talk to her, and then the week after that, Alex Albrecht, one of the creators of Dignation, co-founders, I guess you'd say, and also that totally rad show, will be here, as well as, brace yourself, John Hamm. Ladies, want to take a knee? Go ahead. A lot of great shows. Go to the website, check out the schedule to see all the other guests that are coming. Again, I want to thank Mahalo Studios for allowing us to do the show here. And the 3 degrees we now have. Sammy, you want to come on camera and help me with this?
Should I come on here?
Sure.
All right, now.
Sid,
Right here.
please, we have another camera we can use.
Here we go. I'll do this quick, because...
Sam Levine, one of the stars of Quentin Tarantino's next film, Inglourious Bastards, without sound. But Alex, the newest member of our crew, will rush right in.
Brilliant. Thank you, sir.
As we set land speed records for inviting someone onto the show. All right, 3 degrees to Lon Chaney Jr.
Lon Chaney Jr. was in a little film called Eyes of the Underworld
I'll say.
in 1942 with the young man named Mark Lawrence,
And
who must have been a really young man.
wow.
Because in 1999, he appeared in a little film called End of Days with You, Kevin Pollak.
And we're suggesting it was the same Mark Lawrence. Well, anybody that wants to challenge that, go to kevinpollakschatshow.com or samlevine.net. Thank you very much, Sam. Sam Levine and out. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you next Sunday, and thanks for joining us. And I was supposed to have a big famous sign-off this week prepared, and all of 6 of them I came up with were completely lame. So anything you want to write into at contact at kevinpollakschatshow.com or Twitter at Kevin Pollak. Any of your suggestions for a soon-to-be famous sign-off, signature sign-off, I'd be happy to, as again, I'm trying to include you in the show, and if I use your sign-off, yet another opportunity to win the prize. All right. Good night. For now, the sign-off is indeed, once again, crystal clear. We're not ready. Good night.